Ozoemena was different from everyone else in the village. While the other men grew old and their hair turned grey, Ozoemena stayed the same. He looked as young as he did when he was 25 years old. The villagers thought he was blessed by the gods. They admired his youthful looks and often asked him for the secret to staying young. But Ozoemena had no secret to share. Deep down, he knew he was not blessed. He was cursed. This curse had haunted him for many years, and he feared it would never end. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a deep orange, Ozoemena sat alone in his small hut. His heart was heavy with sadness. He had watched his friends grow old and pass away, but he remained the same. He had no family, no wife, no children. Loneliness wrapped around him like a cold blanket. Ozoemena remembered the day the curse began. It was many years ago, in a time when he was full of hope and dreams. Ozoemena had wished to stay young forever, thinking it would bring him happiness. As the years passed, Ozoemena realized the price of his wish. He could never grow old, but he could never truly live either. He was trapped in a body that never aged, while the world around him changed. He saw generations come and go, but he remained alone. One day, as Ozoemena walked through the village, he overheard a group of children talking. They were laughing and playing, their faces full of joy. Ozoemena longed to feel that joy, to experience life as they did, but he knew he could not. His curse had taken that away from him. As he continued his walk, Ozoemena noticed a stranger in the village. The man was tall and wore a long dark robe. His face was hidden under a hood, and he carried a staff that seemed to glow with an eerie light. Ozoemena felt a chill run down his spine as the man approached him. "Are you the one they call Ozoemena?" the stranger asked in a deep voice. Ozoemena nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. "I have heard of your curse," the man said. "I can help you, but it will not be easy." "What must I do?" Ozoemena asked, his voice trembling. The stranger looked around, making sure no one was listening. "There is a way to transfer your curse to another," he whispered. "But you must find someone willing to take it from you. Once the curse is transferred, you will age, and they will remain young." Ozoemena's heart sank. How could he ask someone to take on his curse? It was too terrible a burden to place on another person. But at the same time, the thought of finally being free was too tempting to ignore. The stranger handed Ozoemena a small black stone. "This stone holds the curse," he explained. "When you find someone willing to take it, place the stone in their hand and speak these words. 'With this stone I give you my years, may you wear them well. But remember, once you give the curse away, there is no going back.'" Ozoemena took the stone, feeling its weight in his hand. It was small but heavy, as if it carried the weight of 1,000 years. He looked up to thank the stranger, but the man had disappeared, leaving Ozoemena alone with his thoughts. For days, Ozoemena carried the stone with him, unsure of what to do. He could not bring himself to pass the curse to another, but he could not bear to live with it any longer. Every time he saw a young person, he wondered if they would be willing to take the curse, but he could never ask. As time passed, Ozoemena grew more and more desperate. He began to withdraw from the villagers, spending his days alone in his hut. The curse weighed heavily on him, and he feared he would never find peace. One evening, Ozoemena heard a knock on his door. He opened it to find a young woman standing outside. Her name was Nkem. She looked at Ozoemena with concern. "Ozoemena, you have been alone for too long," Nkem said softly. "The villagers are worried about you. They say you have a heavy burden on your heart. Please, let me help you." Ozoemena's heart ached at her words. He wanted so badly to be free of the curse, but he could not bring himself to place it on someone as kind and pure as Nkem. But Nkem was persistent. She visited Ozoemena every day, bringing him food and company. Slowly, Ozoemena began to open up to her. One day, as they sat together by the fire, Ozoemena finally told Nkem the truth about his curse. He explained how he had wished for eternal youth and how it had become a curse that he could not escape. Nkem listened quietly, her eyes filled with sympathy. When Ozoemena finished, she took his hand and looked into his eyes. "Ozoemena, I have seen the pain this curse has caused you," Nkem said. "I cannot bear to see you suffer any longer. If you wish to pass the curse to me, I will take it." Ozoemena was shocked. He had never expected Nkem to offer to take the curse. He pulled his hand away, shaking his head. "I cannot do that to you," Ozoemena said. "It is too great a burden. I cannot ask you to give up your life for me." But Nkem was determined. "You have suffered for so long, Ozoemena," she said. "I want to help you. If taking the curse will give you peace, then I am willing to do it." Tears welled up in Ozoemena's eyes. He was torn between his desire to be free and his love for Nkem. He could not imagine placing such a terrible burden on her, but he also knew that he could not continue living with the curse. After a long silence, Ozoemena made his decision. He reached into his pocket and took out the black stone. He held it out to Nkem, his hand shaking. "Are you sure, Nkem?" Ozoemena asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Nkem nodded, her eyes steady and calm. "I am sure," she said. With a heavy heart, Ozoemena placed the stone in Nkem's hand. He spoke the words the stranger had told him. "With this stone, I give you my years. May you wear them well." As soon as the words left his lips, a strange feeling washed over Ozoemena. He felt the weight of the curse lift from his shoulders, and for the first time in many years, he felt free. He looked at Nkem, who now held the stone, and a deep sadness filled his heart. He knew she would now bear the burden he had carried for so long. Ozoemena watched as Nkem slowly began to change. Her youthful features remained the same, but her eyes grew distant, as if she were carrying a heavy burden. Ozoemena's heart ached for her, but he knew there was no going back. In the days that followed, Ozoemena noticed the first signs of aging. His hair began to turn grey and wrinkles appeared on his once smooth skin. The villagers noticed too, and they whispered among themselves, wondering what had happened to the man who had never aged. Nkem, on the other hand, remained unchanged. She continued to visit Ozoemena, bringing him food and company, but there was a sadness in her eyes that had not been there before. Ozoemena could see the toll the curse was taking on her, and it filled him with guilt. One day, as they sat together in Ozoemena's hut, Nkem spoke up. "Ozoemena, I do not regret taking the curse," she said softly, "but I can feel its weight, and I fear it will consume me if I do not find a way to release it." Ozoemena looked at her with sorrow. "I am so sorry, Nkem," he said. "I should never have asked you to take this burden." But Nkem shook her head. "You did not ask me, Ozoemena. I offered, and I do not regret it. But we must find a way to break this curse before it destroys us both." Ozoemena nodded, a sense of determination rising within him. He could not allow Nkem to suffer the same fate he had. They would find a way to break the curse, no matter what it took. Together, they began to search for answers. They visited the wise old woman who had granted Ozoemena's wish all those years ago, but she was nowhere to be found.